Welcome back to the show, Business Mastery for Startups, Scale-Ups, and Early Stage Businesses with your host, Jerry Gadori. That's me. And this week, for a guest, we've got Shaun McAndrew. Shaun is a former Navy helicopter pilot. I will refrain from Marine Navy jokes out of deference to our audience's sensitive ears. And now currently the owner and founder of, I'm going to mess up your company's name, of Aerial Advisor. Thank you. So Aerial Advisor, which focuses on helping small business owners and founders to streamline their processes and increase their profits. So with that horrible introduction out of the way, let's have Shaun do a far better job. Shaun, take the mic.
Hi, Jerry. Thank you so much. And yes, I am known as the Aerial Advisor. I am a former Navy helicopter pilot. My mantra is think forward, choose excellence. I specialize in helping small business owners with a holistic approach to growing their business. I'm most known for finding six figures in 60 minutes through my unique and exclusive rapid altitude assessment.
Wow.
As you said, I am a task-oriented, systems-oriented person. And so I love taking people on a journey. And I say aerial advisor, helicopter pilot, it kind of makes sense. But between my experience in the Navy as a helicopter pilot and then as a strategist, if you've ever flown and you look at the roads on the ground and finally see how they connect on the maps and you kind of go, aha, that's what I do in my mind when I listen to business owners and I start to hear where they are in their business, where do they want to go, and be able to connect the dots, and find those roads so that they actually can create their own business flight path to go forward to get their business to the level that they are really interested in going, to actually have the life that they originally dreamed that they were going to have when they started their own business.
You said a couple things there I'd love to unpack. One of them about getting from where they are to where they'd like to be. I call it your present state to your future state. It implies a level of knowledge that I think I would be surprised if you occasionally didn't need to bring to your clients, which is understanding what their future state is, what they actually want that to be. Mm-hmm. A second thing you said that I love to unpack in our conversation today was I think a lot of owners get so mired in their day-to-day that they forget what it is that they did this for. I know that sounds ridiculous to folks, listening that are maybe at the idea stage, but you can get so mired in the day-to-day that you lose sight of what you actually wanted to do. So I would imagine that you spend a lot of time engaging with your clients in ways that, frankly, they should probably engage with theirs.
There's a lot of truth to that. What I do is most business owners that I do engage with, I do find, what is that thing that they were really going for? And you're right. More often than not, they have forgotten it, or they never even recognized it in themselves. And I often get the question like, oh, nobody's ever asked me that before. And nobody's ever really said it. And there's a few aha moments, that I get with business owners while we're on this journey to be able to understand what does that destination really look like? And are they on the path to get there? Because you're right. So many startup owners or startups, business owners, they get overwhelmed with the minutia of the day-to-day. They have a passion. For whatever reason, they started a business on that passion. And then they get to working. And I hate to say this, but good business is built on systems and processes that are boring. They're repetitive, they're routine. And a lot of people don't get excited about that. And that can be very hard, especially if you are that visionary and you have that idea. You want to do it once, but you don't want to necessarily do it twice, 3 times, 4 times to provide the consistency that you actually need to grow a business. And so being able to get owners to understand how systems can help them with that, how automation can help them with that, how their employees can actually help them more with that is, I'll say something I help them discover in themselves and then be able to implement either those systems, those policies, or their own coaching for their own team so that they actually can put those things in place to get the consistency, to get the data, to actually get the revenue that they want. Therefore, the life they want really need.
No, absolutely. And you say something that's important here. So I think personally, every founder should do as much of everything that they can in the beginning themselves, in the beginning, so that they understand the systems and processes that they have to build. Like, I'll use myself as an example. My background is sales and recruiting from an individual contributor level. So those things clearly after 30 years come naturally to me. Marketing, not as much, but close enough to sales that I can pick it up easily. But accounting might as well be alchemy. It's the area I have struggled with the most. So before I offloaded to a bookkeeper and all of those folks, I did enough of it to understand so that I could interview a bookkeeper and know the questions to ask. And from a management perspective, understand how to supervise that resource. And I think that's key. The other thing I think that's key in doing it all yourself, again, only in the beginning, doing that for long term is a recipe for disaster. But as you will know better what questions to ask your clients and how to engage with them, and the things that you learn from doing that will again empower you to create better systems and processes and to be able to better supervise the folks that you ultimately hand those tasks and roles off to. What are your thoughts on that?
Jerry, I completely agree with you, and I'm going to amplify what you said. What I find is many business owners, they start to get to that overwhelm that we both talked about, and they go, I'm going to outsource this. Great, good, awesome. They outsource it, and then they are not happy with the results. Why? Exactly what you said. They've never done it before or don't have a basic fundamental understanding of how do they hold that person, that group, that entity accountable for results. And they probably can't even articulate the results that they want to get. So they can't even guide, whoever they hand it off to in a sufficient way for them to be able to get the outcomes that they actually need. They don't have the systems, they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the expertise. And that is one of the things I do find with, some of the business owners that I work with is they have some gaps in knowledge. And so getting them to be able to learn the basics. Again, I don't want any of my business owners to become accountants or bookkeepers unless that's their business, by any stretch of the imagination. But you're right. If they don't have the fundamental understanding of how those functions are supposed to support them, they're going to struggle in getting those systems to support them. It's
Couldn't
hard to
agree more.
it's hard to hold somebody accountable for what you don't know to hold them accountable for.
And I think that might feed some of the reluctance that so many business owners feel about handing off tasks. Now, I suspect it's the same in the Navy. I know it is in the Marines, but from a leadership perspective, we were taught that you can delegate anything except for responsibility. So I've brought that forward in the businesses I've run over the years. But one thing that I've done, again, I suspect it's the same for the Navy, but it's definitely this way in the Marines. One of the things that the military does well that I would love to see more of in the civilian world is in a lot of civilian leaders' minds, if I'm delegating to Shaun, I'm handing Shaun a pile of work, like they're flicking a switch. And that's not the way that you successfully delegate. Delegation is a transition. So, hey, Shaun, this is what you're going to do. Watch me do it. Okay, let's do it together. Let's do it together. Let me see you do it, and you're off. And I think that if number one, the founders understood enough of that system or process themselves to have a confidence in what they're handing over, and number two, if they view delegation as a transition instead of a flip switch, that there would be a lot more of it, and they'd frankly grow that much faster.
No, I love what you say with delegation. It is essential for a business to grow, period. Solopreneurs can only grow so far. And as far as I know, there is no one who can really know it all. and be an expert in all areas,
Yeah, no,
whatever that is. And you want to hire, for expertise, but you also need to be able to articulate and communicate, well, what do you actually need to be done? And I think that's where delegation fails, because I don't even know if it's flip a switch as much as more hit a volleyball over the net and be like,
yeah,
good
exactly.
luck, it's over the wall, goodbye.
Later, bye, sucker.
And then the other thing too is getting comfortable asking that person what they're doing and why, and being able to listen and guide. I don't know that enough managers, owners, whatever it is, will take the time to listen to their employees who they have delegated it to, and listen to what it is and listen for the gaps. Listen to what they don't know,
Yes,
instead of taking it over and being frustrated that it's not perfect. Except when you delegate something and you give it, what you get back is not going to be at your level, especially if it's something that you've been doing, and you've gotten comfortable doing it at your level of expertise.
yes,
Yes, a lot of times hopefully people will surprise you, which is awesome. But there's a lot of times you do need to teach or coach them into better, as well as nobody is going to do it like you. And you have to realize that. And that's
100%
okay.
yes, 100% yes.
Um, but being able to support them to that next level. And, there was nothing more frustrating in the military when you would have a boss come to you and say, I want a rock. And you go, okay, what color rock do you want? I don't know. Bring me a rock. And you did. And it's like, that's the wrong color rock. Okay, well, what color do you want? I don't know. Just bring me another rock. And you're like, if you can't tell me what you need or what outcome I'm supposed to be delivering to you, I'm guessing. And you're expecting a great result when you can't take the time to communicate what you need and what you're expecting.
You've touched on so many areas that I talk about in my book: active management, EFG leadership framework, engaging with folks. And one of the big reasons that I think doesn't get enough attention with founders and business leaders is how important communication is. We're focusing right now internally on how leaders need to talk to their teams. But I think that same reluctance has a tendency to prevent leaders from reaching out to their clients and prospects more often than they do. I think a lot of leaders, they fill in what they should know with what they believe the case to be, instead of going to their prospects, their clients, and talking to them and learning more. And they wind up making decisions, building products, etc., off of what they believe the need to be instead of what they know the need to be because they spoke to someone.
Uh, my most fun question to ask a business owner is, what problem do you solve? If I get a response in 15 seconds in 1 to 2 sentences, I know that person is running their business well. I normally get a habita paragraph of it. And it's a lot of exactly what you said. They don't know what problem that they solve, and then they haven't talked with customers or prospective customers to really understand or think through what is the problem that they really have and why are they going to buy from me? And they are coming from this feature benefit, and it's a build it and they will come. And I'm going to go, maybe. Yes, there are some things that are so unique and individual that adage is true. But from my experience and when I've talked to with a number of different businesses, you build it and you actually confuse your customers. That's more the reaction. And then they end up having to do all of this integration stuff and a lot of expense, to the owner, and, you know, and end up cutting into their margins because it's costs more to actually deliver. If they would actually invest even in just thinking through what is the problem, and how does our solution, in other words, what is the outcome that customer really wants, and put their solution in those terms, it would be game changing. Because too often it's, I look at the Dell and it's like, I've got this kind of processor with this much RAM and with this much this. It's not, oh, you have an integrated system that's going to last 3 years that you don't have to worry about and is going to do your average networking that can be used for both business and personal. Those are two different conversations. And so I see too many businesses, and businesses of all sizes. This is not just small businesses. This isn't just startups. I see it in medium and large businesses. They focus on a feature benefit. They have not talked with customers, and they still don't even know what they're really solving. So their product market fit is horrible, and they struggle.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so we're talking about a lot of different things here. One of the things you touched on is positioning. And positioning is something that I've struggled with as well, because it's so difficult, especially if what you do is similar to what another company does, but not the same. So where I help companies to consistently attract, recruit, and retain top talent, and to lead those teams to consistent high performance, what I do is a combination of digital marketing in the form of employer branding, recruitment in the form of, recruitment, and leadership training, and HR operations. It's really a combination. We're building the people side of the business. But if I'm talking to a busy leader, they tend to dump everything I say down to a box and say, "Oh, you're a staffing firm." Well, no, we're a staffing firm like a car is an engine. Yes, it's a piece of what we do, but it's only a small piece of what we do. And now I find myself tap dancing, like you described with the the two paragraphs, trying to get them to open their mind again and listen. So positioning is certainly a difficult thing, at least from my experience.
I will say it is the one thing most business owners struggle with, and it's one of the things I will say that can change a business is by getting a true position of market dominance, which is being able to articulate the problem that ideal customer has with the solution that you offer and why it's so unique. And I'll use one of the simplest, position of market dominance that has worked for eons. Melt in your mouth and not in your hands. Every single person who just heard that thought M&M. Because what's the problem? I want to be able to eat, some chocolate and it not sit there and melt in my hand so that I can actually hold it for a little bit. Because if I put a Hershey bar in my hand, I'm going to have a brown hand, and it's not going to be fun. So,
as someone who's eaten a small pack of M&Ms from an MRE in a swamp in North Carolina, I will say it might be catchy marketing, but it is a filthy lie.
So, being able to talk about that problem, and I will say it is a challenge. A lot of business owners do not, and startup and founders don't really think through who is their ideal client. What are those characteristics? They want to be very general and broad, and it's not. You want to talk to a human. You want your avatar to be a single person that you name, not because you necessarily want to limit it to it, but having that conversation even with that mental person starts getting you thinking in a very different way. It starts narrowing down. And what's funny is the more you narrow down and you've solved that one person's problem, other people are going to hear that problem and that solution themselves that's broader than what you did with that avatar. And that's okay. That's wonderful.
I need to share a story to highlight what you just said. So my most successful project that I've ever done and my least successful project that I've ever done. So the most successful by a lot was Apicero, a MuleSoft consulting company. The only thing we did was MuleSoft. We were the only company in the world that partnered with them across all three of their areas. We started at 2 people, ended when we were acquired with 9 offices in 3 countries and 2,500 employees. And from day one to the last day, we were a MuleSoft implementation company. That was all that we did, period, full stop. And we crushed. We went to a 9-figure acquisition in 5 years. Like I said, 0 to 2,500 folks, because we had a laser focus. There wasn't a question or doubt. Used MuleSoft, we're the best there was, period, full stop. There was no need to go beyond that. We were growing so quickly that sales, we stopped putting in significant sales effort. All of our effort went to recruiting because we couldn't get people quickly enough to be able to do the work we were winning. And that's frankly one of the big parts of the destination employer methodology, the things we succeeded with there. Wrapped that up, went to another client who will remain nameless. And they were a small software development company. I took over an executive role there and tried to get the owner to change his mindset from who's your best client, his answer, whoever will sign the check, to some type of a focus, and never could. And we achieved virtually nothing in the time I was there.
It's some of the old adages, if you try to please everyone, you'll please no one.
Exactly. If everything is a 10, nothing is a 10.
And, there's riches in the niches.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you do not have, a single avatar, a single ideal client that you are looking towards, then no one is really going to hear you. And I'll tell you what, that's scary for a small business owner.
Yeah.
That's scary for a founder. Like, let's be real with what's going on, because you have this great idea and you're like, I'm going to focus on one person. No, you're going to focus on one avatar that looks like an individual so that you can actually communicate well with more than one person. But narrowing it down, I will say, feels wrong to a lot of people. It feels very, very wrong. And what I've seen time and time again is the exact example you have stated. When they get very, very focused on who that person is and they start talking to that person, things change dramatically. All of a sudden, they become attractive to more and more people because there's elements of the people that they're attracted to in what they're saying. It may not be perfect, but there's now starting to be overlapped because it's become personalized. It's become directive. And it's talking about the outcomes that they're going to have in a future life and getting their desires answered, not a generalization of, what do you do? I mean, I helped a client recently. She had, I'll say her elevator pitch, her position of market dominance, and it was close. I mean, it was really close. But she had people, she would say it, what she would and what she did. And people go, well, what do you do? And I worked with her over a couple of weeks right at the beginning of our engagement. And we tweaked, I think we tweaked 4 or 5 words. That's how small of a change it really was. And when she started introducing herself as that, she got, oh, really? Tell me more. And she started getting more and more clients, and she started to get more engagement. And she thought about it and she was like, oh my God, I cannot believe the change. What a shift. So you're right. That messaging, that positioning can be very game changing when you focus on the avatar and that customer whose problem you're going to solve.
I completely agree, and I'd like to amplify one of the things you mentioned there, and that's that I understand the fear of that founder. They don't want to walk away from business that they know they could do because it doesn't fit their avatar. Mm-hmm. But what I encourage people, and this is a tip I give, and this is, I implement this again and again. Keep your marketing story, keep your client acquisition strategy as laser focused as you can. But once you're in that company and you're doing good work and you're earning your kudos, now it's okay to offer them things that you don't generally advertise. Mm-hmm. We somewhat jokingly internally called it, spreading across the host. Once you actually get in, like it's a virus. So using, Appostar as an example, going in, doing MuleSoft work, earning kudos for the great work we did, and then getting introduced to other managers to do other related things that we could hand off to one of our sister companies was a great way for us to kind of keep that revenue in the family. And that's something that many companies I've worked with over the years have successfully implemented. But to your point, it all comes back to understanding that avatar so that you can get through that much more easily.
No, I completely agree and appreciate exactly what you said, Jerry. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So what else would you like to add? We've talked a lot about a lot of different things. The avatar piece especially is kind of a riff on the concept of an ICP, personifying an ideal client profile. What other tips would you like to give founders?
I'll say be wary of who you do take advice from.
Oh, that's a good one.
All right. Free advice is what it's worth. Who you surround yourself, realize you don't have to have all the answers. And if you think you do, be afraid.
Yeah, I think people think that asking for help is a weakness, but it's a superpower. It truly is.
No, it very much is. And that is, I will say, not just for owners,
No,
not just for founders. That's a true statement for, I would say, all of us. From young professionals through, adult manager, older managers, older workers, we tend not to ask for help. But I think figuring out how to ask for help genuinely and being willing to give it is one of the best ways to, I'll say, expand your influence and increase, your value to others.
100%. I think the reason why changes. So in my experience, younger workers are afraid to expose ignorance because they're already battling imposter syndrome. And older workers are afraid to expose weakness in a knowledge that they think everyone assumes they have. But while, again, I appreciate the genesis of the concern, it's something to overcome because you're doing everyone, most especially yourself, a disservice by hiding that need for help.
No, and people find excuses to hide it over and over again.
Yes, and you said another thing that's important. I don't want to spend too much time on it because I feel like I talk about it a lot, but where you get advice from is huge. I'm not going to get advice on how to quit drinking from a bartender. So when it comes to business advice, you want to make sure that the person that you're talking to understands not only you, but what you're trying to achieve and how you get there, and they understand where you're at. So probably assuming you're going to what would be an otherwise good source, one of the most consistent mistakes I see both on giving and getting advice is that the person is giving you advice for a business that's in a different stage of its life cycle. So what might be good advice for me at the end of my first year could be horrible advice for me at the end of my fifth year. And I think that's something often overlooked.
No, I agree, and the advice in businesses fundamentals stay the same, but how you implement and execute the fundamentals are going to change. A solopreneur is not going to operate the same way as they did with 10 people, 10 employees or 20 employees. And that same person should not be operating the same way if they had 200 employees. There has to be growth and an evolution in what they are doing. Otherwise, those people won't stick around and the business won't be around.
100%. Vern Harnish's excellent book, Scaling Up, touches on that, about how businesses change throughout their life cycle and needing to understand that. My initial business experience was in technology services, mostly in staffing. And one of the interesting things there is how staffing companies change as they grow. So sub $5 million in revenue, very often they run almost like a club. There's very little structure. You don't need a lot of people to get there. Once they get to 8 to 12 million, right around $10 million, they start to really have to organize around a basic structure with real reporting, but they tend not to be viable from an M&A perspective until they're about 25 million, because at 25 million, the staffing firm has enough structure that an entity is actually getting something, the acquisition. Whereas less than that, for the most part, they're getting a couple of hires and they're getting, a client list, and that's about it. So it's interesting the way that works.
You're right. Learning business while running, while business fundamentals are simple and straightforward, the implementation and execution is so varied.
Yes.
And again, if running a business was easy, more people would do it.
100%. I think people lose sight of the fact, humans and chimpanzees share 98% of their DNA, but wow, what a difference that 2% makes. And it's the same way in business. I might be a wildly successful technology service person and be a C minus, retail owner or product person, not because one is better than the other or requires a higher level of intelligence, but because that little bit of difference is a difference. And if I don't know to make those changes, I'm going to sink.
So true. Absolutely true, Jerry.
So we've covered a lot of ground, Shaun. If you could give a founder or a business owner one tip, what do you think that would be?
I'll say, and this goes in line with where do you get advice? Find the right coach. We often cannot read the label outside of our own bottles. You need someone with an external perspective to be able to give you feedback in what you are even saying to yourself, to actually hear what you're saying and be able to get that feedback and to get that support you need to your next best.
I couldn't agree more.
If you and I come from someone, I'm like, I didn't know how much I needed a coach. And now I'm surrounded by coaches and by coaching, even being one. And the whole thing that is required is you don't know what you don't know. And if I don't have reflected back to me what I'm saying, I don't even hear what I'm saying. I don't see the gaps. I don't see the seams. And it's the same. And the same is true for most every other person. I've always thought, I can probably solve my own problems, but I need a friend to reflect back to me what I've been saying. Because I probably have most of the answer, but I haven't been able to hear it because it's in with all the other nonsense that's spinning in my head. But when we talk to someone else and we get them to ask us good questions and make us think in ways that we haven't thought of before, and then be able to put that new information with the old information, something new comes out. And that moves us the next step forward. So so that's not just the advisor, but it's really, that sounding board, that trusted agent, who you can go to, who's going to give you, I'll say, direct feedback and tell you, okay, where are the pitfalls? Are you evaluating all the pitfalls? Are you thinking this through the correct way? And I'll say it's a lot of ways to save you a lot of money and probably a lot of aggravation, being able to do that growth that you're interested in.
The only thing I'd like to add to that is this. The beauty of having an actual coach who you pay to give you direction, advice, guides, etc., is you have someone in your corner whose responsibility is you. And as a founder, not only are you often on an island by yourself, but the people who you are interacting with have a vested interest in the outcome of the answer you're asking them for. That coach isn't your employee in the sense that they work for your company. So they aren't going to be afraid to say, Shaun, I think that's a mistake because. And that is invaluable.
And I'll say some of the best coaches are the ones who can ask you the right questions to help you just recognize yourself, the mistake you were about to make.
Yes.
And the best coaches are the ones who are able to guide you without telling you. Because if you tell someone a fact they can dispute it. If they tell themselves the fact, there's nothing to dispute.
So you just touched on something I talk about in sales often. I will save that for another conversation at risk of derailing this. That is wonderful. I couldn't agree more. Coaches have an invaluable place. And the strange thing for me is why there's resistance in business. Most of these folks are avid sports fans, and I've yet to see a single sport that doesn't have a coach attached, even individual sports. So it's not a concept that's foreign to anyone. And yeah, coaching is critical.
Thank you, Jerry. But I think it goes back to what we said about help.
Yes.
If
Agreed.
you are afraid to ask for help or afraid to bring down that facade that you need help, you think there's weakness. And I think that's where a big hesitation comes from, is literally a fear of being unmasked and being judged less than, from what you are supposed to. And you said it very well. They don't have anybody else to talk to. You can't talk to your employees about these issues because they have a different interest than you do. So being that founder, being that business owner is really, really lonely. And then you tend to not know who to trust to be able to open up with.
Could not agree anymore. I feel like we've covered a wide range of topics, and I'd love to have you on the show again to dig into some of them more. But in the interim, I think this is a good place to pause. Let me ask you this, Shaun. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, learn more, what's the best way for them to reach you?
The best way to reach me is via email, and it's Shaun, SHAUN, .McAndrew, MCANDREW, at TFCE, that's Think Forward, Choose Excellence, .io.
Awesome. That sounds great. And folks, that email address will be in the show notes, so don't crash your cars. Try to write that down. Whether you see this on YouTube, it'll be there in the show notes, or whether you listen on Apple or Spotify or anywhere else, it'll be there. So let's go ahead and wrap up now. Shaun, I thank you again for being on. You were a wonderful guest. I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Same here, Jerry. Thank you for having me, and I hope everyone listening has a wonderful day.
Awesome. As always, folks, between this and next week's show, have a great week and continue building awesome things. Goodbye.